Mike, turn your games down.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to episode 157 of Games My Mom Found. And I am Mike Albertin, who's committing genocide with me tonight. I screwed up on that.
You just want to take that again?
Nah. I don't care enough.
All right. Hi, I'm Dominic Chichocki. Hello. Welcome. Hello.
Welcome back.
Hi, I'm Greg Sewart. I was waiting for you to introduce yourself further. It's like, oh, wait, it was my cue.
I can say from the great state of Canada, or how does he say it? I should know.
Yeah, the great state, yeah.
Yeah, the great state of Canada.
Well, you guys have states, don't you, kind of?
No, we have provinces.
Provinces, okay.
Don't you dare. Don't start talking. Don't start.
I don't know a lot about Canada, even though there were times in 2016 I thought about moving up there. Like, I should move up there.
Yeah. No, provinces. We have provinces.
I really have thought about it multiple times.
We're a nice place. We're nice people.
Anyway, we're trying to talk about a game, Metroid Prime Federation Force.
I do want to cover that one day, actually.
I've never played that.
I'm down. All the weird Metroid spin-offs that happened during the DS and 3DS.
First, Dominic, where can people find you at?
Yeah, so you can find me on Dissonant Ways podcast on YouTube and YouTube. I'm also on the Overblood Facebook group.
And Greg, where people can find you at and might know you from?
You can find me from the Player One podcast, player1podcast.com on Spotify and Facebook and YouTube and all those places that you find podcasts. And also Generation 16 on YouTube, where I talk about the history of the Genesis.
And we're here tonight to talk about a game that I had neglected to play, even though I had a sealed copy right next to me. Metroid Samus Returns came out in 2017 for the 3DS.
I also had a copy I've neglected to play, so I was very happy to crack that open.
Wow, I'm surprised. I had played this. I played through this back when it came out, which feels like it was a lot longer than 2017, but it was really great to pick it up and play it again because I had not touched it since I played through it the first time.
As a 3DS apologist, I feel like this is my greatest shame, not actually playing it.
You know what really reminded me? Because basically I was an avid 3DS player right up until the Switch came out. And then it's like, well, I don't need, you know what I mean? Like, I don't need a portable Nintendo system now because I have a portable Nintendo system in the Switch. And I hadn't turned on my 3DS in, probably 4 years. And there was two things that really struck me. One, the battery was still fully charged.
Yes.
Which was amazing. And two, I really miss playing games in 3D.
Yes.
I loved it.
I can't. I turn on the 3D and I just get upset and turn it off immediately.
Oh, I love it. I love it.
You see, for a while, I actually had my own blog where I chronicled the 3DS post-Switch release, pretty much, 2018 to the very end. It was like, you people are missing out. You guys need to get back on this train. Come on.
It's one of the systems that I have played very little for.
Oh, I played so much 3DS.
Persona Q2, fantastic game. Yokai Watch 3, fantastic game. They deserved recognition. And it's just like, I just saw the writing on the wall when this game came out, and everyone was like, but it's not on Switch.
Yeah, I mean, that was my biggest complaint about it when it came out, is that I was excited that we were getting a 2D Metroid again for the first time since, Fusion or Zero Mission?
Yes.
But, I wanted it on a home console. So I was a little bit cranky about that, but I still played it because it was Metroid, so.
Fusion was 2002.
And Zero Mission was 2004.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about Zero Mission.
It's ridiculous. It was over 10 years between those 2D games.
That's a long time, but that's not that surprising with them. Like they like to skip. Well, after 2010, when Metroid Other M came out and it didn't do well, they just sat on this until Federation Force.
I forgot about Mother M. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think they'd like you to forget about Other M.
Yeah.
We keep calling it Mother M, I feel like.
I couldn't remember the name of it. It was I forget, a couple weeks ago. I'm like, what's the other Metroid game? I could not think of it. I had to look it up, like Metroid Wii game. I'm like, oh yeah. I just could not remember Other M.
Yeah, I bounced off that pretty fast.
I still really want to play it again, but emulation. I own it. I bought it new. Like $5 at Best Buy in a deep clearance. I get rid of this shit.
Yep, that's how that works.
This game surprised me. Like I had known a little bit about it going in. Like I'd heard people talk about how hard it was beforehand, and
yes.
And that kind of hit me right away. Like this game, at least in the beginning, is very much all about countering enemies or you're going to get murdered immediately. I did not like that at first.
Yeah, I remember that being the real complaint back then, I think, that I had with the game. I actually went back and tried to find like the episodes of the podcast where we're talking about this, and I honestly have not been successful in figuring out what episode I was talking about this game on. But yeah, even in the current, even playing through it currently, they really rely on the parry thing a little bit too much.
Yeah.
But, because pretty much every encounter out in, that's not a boss is more or less waiting for the thing to attack you.
Plus at first, at least.
Yeah, plus you get way more pickups that way, right?
I think the one thing I heard about the game was like how hard it was to parry.
It's not that
It's
bad.
not hard.
No, it's not. But that was like the one thing I heard about it. People were like, "Oh, I didn't know you had to do it all the time."
Well, and it's funny with the latest Metroid, with Metroid Dread coming out, I know I kept hearing a lot of, and as much as I liked this game the first time, I had zero memory of it for some reason. And so when we were playing Metroid Dread, I kept hearing people saying, thank God they didn't go so heavy on the parry. And I was like, oh, I didn't realize it was that bad. And then we picked this up. It's like, oh, wow, that's really pretty bad. It's like every single encounter.
So here's the question: did you parry Ridley?
In this, I didn't. You know what? I'm going to be honest. I didn't finish it for the show.
Oh, fair.
That's okay.
I tried, but I didn't get there.
I finished it 3 days ago.
Nice.
I finished it too, but I forgot when, because I forgot to mark it. I posted about it. I was so proud of myself, because this is actually the first Metroid game I beat legit, because every other one I cheat with save states.
Oh, nice.
But I couldn't, because I couldn't get the ROM to work on for 3DS, because 3DS emulation is encrypted, so you have to do different things to get them to run, and I didn't want to care enough, so I just I'll just play the legit copy. I just didn't want to open it because it was brand new. Sealed. Plus, I
loses half its value the second you drive it off the lot.
I was scared of this game. I really was. I had heard it was so hard, and I was nervous to play it. But it actually has a decent checkpoint system too. Like when you die, if you do something, if you beat a boss or you get to a boss fight, it will respawn you in the boss fight or right before it. So it was very nice about that to let me fight certain Metroids like 10, 20 times and not care as much.
Also elevators too.
Oh yeah. And when you drop off DNA from the Metroids, it does too.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it's that struck me as well playing this, especially after coming off of Metroid Dread. Is they really give you the opportunity to move around the map very freely in this game, which I really like. It's one of the things I really didn't like about Dread. So
haven't played that yet, but I have played Metroid 2.
After playing this, it made me want to go buy Dread, which I never buy games for full price. But it's Nintendo's, I don't have a choice if I want it. But it really made me interested. I was like, this is really good.
Yeah, I played Metroid 2 probably like 3 or 4 years ago now.
Oh, the original?
Yes.
How did you like it?
It was interesting. It kind of suffers from not having a map.
Yes,
but
absolutely.
It's the weird thing too, where like stuff just happens and it vaguely tells you, kind of. But it's just up to you to be like, oh, the map has changed. I can go in this new direction now. This whole screen is now different. And you just have to explore and figure that out.
I feel Metroid 2 really, and I never really got into Metroid 2. And I mean, I'm old enough that, I was at the right age for it, but when it came out. And I remember picking it up. I actually remember a buddy of mine having it, and I remember trying to play it because I was really into Game Boy. He and I were both really big Game Boy fans, and I just couldn't get into it. But I find it interesting to look back on it now because like Metroid 2 feels so similar to things like Castlevania 2 or Super Mario 2. I know that's a little bit of an oddball comparison. Or like Zelda, or like Zelda 2, where they hadn't really codified what Metroid was.
Yes.
When that came out. So they were just it was just sort of branded as Metroid and they released it and it was okay. So it was kind of nice when they, I think that was the thing I really liked about this too, because being a big Metroid fan, I had absolutely skipped Metroid 2 because I didn't like it at all. So having Samus Returns come out, it was almost like, oh, okay, now I get to experience Metroid 2, but sort of reimagined as part of what has become the Metroid series.
Because
go ahead.
I don't even consider this a remake, to be honest with you. You just said I consider it a reimagining because it's a completely different game. I mean, with different systems. I mean, yes, it follows the same story in quotations, but you're not playing this for the story. There's not much of one either.
The only thing I would say is that this, like, Metroid 2 was more important to the Metroid formula than the other ones you mentioned, Castlevania 2, Mario 2.
Oh, for sure. I mean, it became a cornerstone of the lore. Right,
the lore, also like the spider ball get introduced in Metroid 2, and then kind of the bulkier Samus that we kind of knew.
Yes, yeah, good point.
Well, the spider ball isn't even in any other games till like Metroid Prime.
Which,
and even then, you only
yeah.
use it in certain spots. Like that really surprised me in this game, that how much the spider ball
yes,
is reliant in this game.
I
it's
love
so
Spider
good.
Ball. Yeah, it just opens up the world so much.
It really does. Like, I mean, they do a good job of putting like gel on things where you can't go, or making it that you can't use it in certain spots. But I was really surprised when I got it, because I'm like, I'm not used to this. Like, I played a lot of other Metroid games, but I never had spider ball other than in Prime, which didn't really count because it was so different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it was very for very specific spots in Prime.
The thing I realize now playing this game is that like every Metroid is basically a Metroid randomizer, and that the powers just kind of come like in whatever order they feel like. Like this one, you just start with the morph ball and the missiles.
Yeah,
like you don't have to get them, and then it like gives you the spider ball really early on, and it gives you like super missiles really late and power bombs really late. Where it's like other games, it's like power bombs come halfway through, or maybe in the first third.
The thing that they did add though in this version that was great, obviously, was the different what are the powers? I forget what the actual
Aeon Powers.
Aeon Powers. Thank you. The Aeon Powers make all the difference in the world, especially the one that lets you scan everything. It's like, okay, so you've really streamlined sort of a major Metroid trope, and I'm here for it. I'm down with this. This is great.
I love the scan pulse. It was amazing to find. Like anytime I play a Metroidvania game, I always go and I print out a map that I find online, and then I laminate it and take it home. And I had one, but I didn't even use it in this game because I could just scan pulse everything, and it worked out just fine.
Yeah, that's also something, because like Super Metroid, the X-ray vision comes like one of the last things you get.
Yeah, in Super Metroid, it's definitely more of a, like, if you're the kind of player that wants to go clean up before you finish the game,
right?
Here you go. We're going to make that a little bit easier now that you're near the end,
And this is just like first thing. Yeah. Let's get it.
Yeah.
I also feel you need the upgrades more in this game than you would in Super Metroid.
Mm-hmm.
This game, I mean, I did cheat in Super Metroid when I played it. It was last time rewind and save states the time before that, so I can't say completely, but this did feel harder. I feel like you took more damage in this game. Even when you get the final suit, you're still taking a lot of damage when you get hit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be a thing with Mercurysteam, because Dread is the exact same way.
No.
Like the sort of incidental encounters you have sort of between major boss fights, they ratchet up like crazy, and they dole out a lot of damage. So I feel like that's sort of a Mercurysteam thing that got introduced to the series.
But like I just feel like their puzzles are like every part of the game now feels like it could be a puzzle. Or I feel like in like Fusion, for example, some of that stuff was like really segmented. So, you have like the main room, and then, if you bomb this wall, here's like a puzzle room. Where this is like, no, anything could be anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, Fusion is very straightforward too.
Yes.
I mean, this does a good job of making you feel like you're in a planet, and you're discovering old ruins, because they're supposed to be old Chozo ruins, which were adopted by the Chozos and all that stuff. But
right.
It does kind of feel like that. Like, it does a good job, I feel like, even more than how Super Metroid felt, in a way that you are exploring ruins. Like, this game is also 2.5D graphics, which don't really do a whole lot. I mean, it's essentially a 2D side scroller. It's just there's backgrounds that look cool.
Yes. And also weirdly low FPS cutscenes in elevators.
Yeah, and you know what? That's something else they carried over to Dread. I don't know what the deal is with that, but
the FPS thing.
Yeah, because I hadn't remembered that was a thing, but again, going back and playing it now, it's like, it was happening there too. Anytime there's a teleporter or an elevator, it's just strangely low frame rate for some reason.
Must be a stylistic thing,
I guess. Yeah, but anyway. It's a weird
One
thing.
of the other things that they added is, like, besides the counter that we were talking about, you have like you can stand still in this game and aim however you want because of the circle pad, which I liked, but it would have been nice to use the D-pad sometimes instead of a circle pad for some of the platform with a little.
Yeah, I mean, they use every button in this game. But
yes,
you were talking about Fusion, and I will say that this is one of the things that I like about this a lot is the way that the map kind of expands and opens up. It still gives you the opportunity to sort of, like, if you want, from any point in the map, pretty much at any time in the game, you can pretty much go all the way back to your ship if you want to, right? Which Fusion, I don't seem to remember being like that. It felt way more linear.
It was, but when you opened up in Fusion, finally, you also had the opportunity to go between all of like the different quadrant sectors.
Yeah. This one feels more like Super Metroid to me in that respect, like the ability to. Because I forget exactly where I was in the game, but I kind of hit a wall. I got to a certain area where it was just like, wow, it's really tough in here. Actually, I know where it was. I don't remember the name of it, but it's where you first encounter those turrets that are like almost like shotgun turrets.
Like Area 3 or 4, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, am I supposed to be here yet? Because I don't feel like I'm powerful enough to be here. So I ended up sort of taking that moment to go back and clean up a bunch of stuff that I'd had to skip because I didn't have the right powers on the way through. And I ended up all the way back at her ship because I had the spider ball, so I could climb that whole area and see if there's anything interesting, you know. And it really, really struck me as feeling a lot like Super Metroid as opposed to Fusion.
Yeah, it does. They did kind of try to like emulate Super Metroid in that way. I can definitely there's so many freaking missiles in this game too that you don't need because missiles are pretty much useless.
Yes, which I love.
I mean, I also didn't like it that you only get them in packs of 3. I wanted my 5 packs like normal, like in Super Metroid.
Right.
Sure.
Maybe that's how it was in the original game. I don't know. I never played Metroid 2.
That's a very specific detail.
Yeah. No idea.
I mean, I think this game takes from like the best of everything that came before. Like, it has the best use of like the what Prime did with like the beam and like visor switching with the Aeon stuff. I feel like.
Yeah, it's a good point.
Like it takes that mechanic, but then makes it so you're not relying on it so heavily. You're not just matching that tiny GameCube D-pad for like a million different things.
Yep.
I didn't know how to use the Aeon abilities at first. It took me a while before I figured out. I just press A. I don't know why, but my brain just I had to go. I could not figure out what I would just do it, and I didn't know how I did it.
But then as you think about free aim too, and like where does free aim come from? Free aim comes from I could do that in Prime. I could do that in Prime 3, the Prime trilogy on Wii, where I could just aim the remote.
Yeah, it's a good point too. Never really thought about that.
No, I didn't either. I mean, the game makes you use the free aim. I know when I played Fusion the first time when I was cheating, I would have loved to have free aim because for Fusion to hit the guy in one little spot, and I remember I couldn't do it in time because my controller wasn't very good, so it wouldn't hold it right. So it isn't. The free aim was nice, and the game does a good job of making you have to use free aim because there are a lot of points you have to hit an exact spot on an enemy. Yes,
instead of just having to walk up to it to a certain length and hoping it works, you can just like sit down and just aim.
I love too. You combine that with when you finally get the ability to shoot through walls.
Yes,
and it just makes life so much easier, especially when because I find that's around the time you really start running into a lot of armored enemies. So being able to shoot them from below just makes life so much better.
Yeah, I mean the story of this game, I think I know it's because they're following the old story, but like I thought it was kind of comical how it's like they sent the squad in to go to this planet, gets killed by the Metroids, and like we'll just send in one person, but because we're worried the pirates might use Metroids like they did in the first game, we're gonna kill everything, like kill them all.
Yeah, which genocide aside, I really like that structure.
I think they retconned that into something so interesting. Like that to me, I mean, we're talking 20 years ago at this point, but again, going back to when these games were new, when they hadn't really, again, codified what Metroid was or really built up the lore outside of the first Metroid is great and the Metroid creatures were a great idea. Mm-hmm. But then Return of Samus just felt like, again, it's Metroids and it's a Game Boy game and let's have a very simple concept and go for it. And the way that they retconned that into what became not only Super Metroid, but then also Metroid Fusion, where it had such long-lasting impact for such a throwaway idea in 1990. Mm-hmm. It was just brilliant. I mean, I love that they've been able to grow it from what was really a nothing game, 35 years ago.
I would disagree that it's a nothing game. Like it was a fine time. I had fun with it.
Yeah,
but
it was for me. I guess that's why
sure.
I guess that's the impact it's had on me. But
sure. Yeah. But I just like the idea of okay, you have your very clear objective. There may be some boss battles, but you're focused on just killing these Metroids. Like that's it. That is such a very clear and interesting premise to me, whether it's either version. Like it's a unique structure just because you're not expecting much else. So whenever anything else happens, it's more of a surprise. Because you're like, 35 Metroids to go. Oh, what's this? A boss is happening? That's not a Metroid? Okay.
Yeah, those are some of the worst fights though.
Sure.
But it was cool. Like I did like the whole the way that you're hunting these Metroids in each area you go to, you have a gate that will, say, okay, you got to kill 4 Metroids in this area before you can continue on. Like I actually like the way the map is also designed. Like each area is kind of broken up.
Yes.
I thought that worked very well and was And just the way that they divvy up abilities, other than power bombs, I liked how they did it. I just don't like that power bombs are so late in the game.
They really are.
I think it's area 6 or 7 you get them.
Yes,
it's way too late, and there's 8 areas in the game.
When you beat the digger boss.
Oh god, that was a miserable fight.
That is the hardest fight. I am sure.
Yeah, It's I think it's funny, and you guys not having played Metroid Dread, it would have been interesting to hear your thoughts on what you're playing here compared to Dread, because I having gone back now and really, comparing the two games personally, because I'm not a big fan of Metroid Dread at all. And like, it feels like the balance definitely tipped towards the things that Mercurysteam introduced to the series, because this was their first Metroid game. Like, things that, like those really difficult boss fights and things like that, are more prevalent, I find, in Dread than they are here.
Which I'm intrigued by.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's something that you like, then you're definitely getting more of that, right? But again, me not having really strong memories of this game, going back now and playing it and seeing that it's sort of this this pivot point in the series to what brought us to Dread, it's like, I really see sort of the seeds of what became Dread in this game, which is really fascinating to me as sort of a, just to look back.
I mean, I was lucky enough to be able to play Super Metroid for the first time on this podcast not too long ago. And the thing I found shocking about that game was how much of the bosses were very simple and very missile heavy and very just not that exciting. They were like the worst part of the game, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
And like Fusion suffers from that a bit. The other games, like, except the Prime games, kind of suffer from the bosses being a little weak sometimes. And I feel like this is the game that finally understands how to make them more interesting and kind of utilize different aspects of your arsenal and environment and everything to make them more dynamic and fun and hard. Where it's like, to be hard, it was just Ridley taking like 70 missiles before.
Yeah, they were damage sponges. That's sort of traditional boss types.
And like you were mentioning earlier about the Golem, I mean, the Golem was much more of a puzzle boss too.
Yes.
He wasn't really he wasn't a sponge. You just had to know, you had to wait until the right opening came and did the move that you had to do, and then keep going. And
did I have to look up a guide for that? Yes. But that's beside the point.
Yeah, I mean,
I looked up a guide before I fought him just because I watched a speed run, which didn't help me because there's one point when he puts his arms down and when they go inside of them, they like jump into them. And I tried doing that and didn't realize that there's that barrier. I'm like, why can't I do this? I'm like, oh, that's why. Yeah. Because they just jump at the right angle and got in there where it didn't work for me. So.
Yeah, I mean, with sort of creating those points where you need to do things like that. I mean, you're opening yourself up to a potential other issue where, and again, this is something I hit in Dread all the time, where it's like, oh, I missed my moment, and now I have to work back to work. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, it can turn boss fights into the sort of these endless cyclical-ish problems where it's like, if you can't get the timing down for that one particular thing you have to do at that very particular second,
yes,
then you just keep doing the same thing over and over again. So it's definitely a choice, but if it works for people, then it's great.
I mean, I think the morph ball bombing of the Golem is a very good example of that, because it can be really janky sometimes. Right. Because it's very precise. So if you don't do it.
It took me a lot of tries to beat him. I was so happy though. Like, I hadn't felt that like empowered in a while from a game. When I haven't felt that way since Dark Souls.
I was gonna say that. I didn't know if we should say that because that's such a benign comparison at this point.
I mean, yeah, everything, but it's also kind of like
everything's the Dark Souls of something. Yeah.
Zelda 2 is Dark Souls of Zelda before Dark Souls. You lose your experience, you drop what you had. Yeah, Dark Souls.
And it's hard
as hell for no reason. But no, I mean, it just, there aren't many games that give me that feeling, and this game did that.
Yes.
So, and that's what it reminded me of. Like, when I finally beat that Golem, I felt so relieved and so happy after like 10, 15 tries at trying to beat him. I mean, and there were a lot of times with bosses where if it went bad in the first like 20 seconds, I just let him kill me and start over.
Yes, I did that too.
Because there were times when it would just go. I mean, it doesn't take many hits before you die, which I did not like.
I'd be very curious if to try their Castlevania Lords of Shadow 3DS game as well.
I don't think they made that game. Did they?
Yeah, they did. It was not amazing.
But it's probably kind of a prototype of this, in a way, I would think.
Yeah. Did that come up before or after this one?
Oh, that was like 2013, I want to say.
Yeah. So I think that was to me, it really stands out that this feels you can feel Nintendo's influence. Like I don't know how you guys feel about this, but I mean, like any sort of second party Nintendo stuff, I feel like those we were talking about Next Level as an example before we started, and I've heard this from other companies as well. The people who made Metroid Prime, actually, Retro Studios, there were people who worked on that who said like Nintendo coming in and being development partners on something really helps you as a studio up your game, and you kind of get a look at how Nintendo does things, and it makes you sort of a better studio, right? And I really feel like that is absolutely what happened, because for me at least, like Mercurysteam, like if you sort of look at their body of work, for me it starts, I don't know if there was a first game, but it starts with Lords of Shadow on the PS2 and Xbox.
There's a couple games before that, but go ahead.
Yeah, but that was sort of the one where I remember them being, paying attention to them anyway. Yeah. And that was great. And then the sequel was not great. And then there was the Game Boy Castlevania game, which I personally did not like in the least. And then there was this, and it's like, well, they really raised their level on this game. And I think it has everything to do with, Nintendo becoming a partner and sort of guiding them a little bit. I don't know if anyone who works there would say that, but it sort of seems that way to me, right? So, and then here we are with Dread. I mean, one of the best games of the year. It's winning Game of the Year awards all over the place. So, but yeah, I felt like their Castlevania DS game or 3DS game was a bit of a low point, and then to see sort of that Nintendo injection, that Nintendo design philosophy injection, really changed the way they make games, I think.
I mean, yeah, Next Level is a great example of that too. Like you were saying, like what did they do that wasn't Nintendo? NHL Hits Pro. Okay, yeah. Sure. And then they did the Mario soccer games, and then they did Spider-Man Friend or Foe. They did that Wii Tom Clancy game.
Yeah,
Ghost Recon, the bad one.
Nothing terrible, but you're not looking at them going, oh my God, they're one of the greatest studios on the planet or anything like that.
Right, but they're also doing Punch-Out. They're doing Luigi's Mansion Dark Moon.
Right.
At the same time. They did the Captain America game for 360.
That's a good game.
Oh yeah, right. I forgot about that.
That's a really good game.
But then on the inverse of that too, it's kind of funny that you have Federation Force going back to that of like this reviled game because it wasn't what Mercurysteam did.
Yeah, I feel like, again, with Federation Force, though, I think that has more to do with them slapping a Metroid license on something that shouldn't have been.
Right.
I don't know if Federation Force is a decent game on its own, but I think if you look at that game as a not Metroid game, is it an okay game?
I've never played it.
I didn't play it.
That's the problem, right? None of us have. But because it had the Metroid name on it, you've got that sort of vitriol around. It's like, well, this isn't a real Metroid game. It doesn't deserve to be a Metroid game. So, I think the bigger problem with that game was putting that name on it than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, it's the weird thing of back when they started doing all those weird, different, expanded into Metroid ideas like pinball and hunters and all that stuff.
Right.
That was the apex of them doing like, here's Metroid Prime 1 and 2 and Fusion and Zero Mission. There was that base to build on of like, okay, now they can get wild and crazy with it. And here they tried to do that, but before they released Samus Returns. And so people just were livid for, I guess, not a really good reason, but I guess I can understand it.
Well, it would have been 6 years since Other M, and we got Metroid Prime Federation Force, so I'm sure that played a part in it. That
too.
And I mean, we've learned, especially over the last 5 to 10 years, how terrible fandom can be.
Yes.
If it's not exactly what people want, then it's the worst thing in the world, and things just sort of escalate from there. So.
Well, this is a series that they'll tend to neglect every so often.
Yeah,
they just like when we went, from 2010 to 2016, you get Federation Force, and 2017 you get Samus Returns, and then you don't get anything until 2021 Metroid Dread.
Yeah, because Samus Returns was not marketed super well and didn't sell amazingly. I think it sold okay, but
I really don't know. But yeah,
plus
I mean, I think you look at Nintendo's fortunes too in that time. I mean, they really struggled with the Wii U as well, and Other M left a bad taste in everyone's mouth, I think. So,
yes,
but they do tend to let their franchises go dormant. I mean, speaking of someone who's been begging the universe for a new F-Zero game now for,
yes,
20 years.
GX is impossibly hard, but a great game.
Yeah.
Is that the GameCube one?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one Sega did.
I own that, I think, somewhere. Never played it. Yeah.
It's so hard.
So hard.
Yep, I do own it. One thing also about this Metroid game they did to make it harder to keep you from jumping around is the lava and the purple goo all do damage exponentially.
Yes.
So that way you can't go, which I didn't like because I tried to go like, okay, I'll just run this lava room real quick and just, see if I can grab something quick and get out. Like, nope, no, you can't. It's purposely set up that way so you can't skip things. Like with the purple goo, I mean, they purposely did that so you can't,
Sure.
just go through it, get enough energy
that-
tank and just leave.
That was their roadblock.
Yeah.
Which I was okay with because at least they weren't locking everything behind you too, right?
Yes.
That's something that Dread does that really drives me crazy. But it's very refreshing to play this and see that they weren't doing that. Yeah, it was
That's
kind of a weird, it's like, oh look, there's this purple goo that exists for no other reason except they don't want me to go there right now. But that's okay because I've got the entire map behind me that I'm still checking anyway. So
Yeah, it didn't bother me because I was always searching. I mean, like fighting the Metroids is definitely enjoyable, hunting the Metroids down in an area and trying to find them. And
Yes.
I didn't like it when they run around and go in different rooms. I wasn't a fan of that, but it made sense from organic standpoint of like,
Right.
This is their home. They're going to move around. Makes sense.
They're going to evolve too. So each set of fights has to get harder somehow.
right.
And I think they do a good job of keeping them like you fight a bunch of the alpha Metroids, which are these small little things that shoot at you. And like they're easy, especially when you get the hang of it and you fight so many of them. And I forget what the next ones are called. The Gammas, I think. Those are the ones that run away.
The
ones where you
names.
get into those series of rooms where they can like wiggle into the
Yeah.
I don't know what they're not really holes. I don't know what you call them.
Right.
Like the vegetation. Yeah.
It looks like goo to me. Like,
Yeah.
And I hate that. They would run away.
Yeah. That was a little bit irritating.
And there's a couple you actually have to go in one room, spook it out, and then go to a different room to fight it.
Well, I mean, I guess you gotta hand it to them though, because I mean you've got 49 of them, 50 of them or something
Sure,
like that.
something like that.
I mean,
There's a
you gotta
lot
do
of-
something to mix it up.
I mean, it was cool. And you have the ones that look like xenomorphs.
Yeah.
I forget what they're called. I did like those though. The only problem I had with them is I didn't know until I watched the video that when they're on the ceiling shooting at you, you can take there's a little red dot on their body. You can take your grappling hook and pull them down.
Yes.
I didn't know that until I
right.
saw the video.
That was super helpful.
It helps a lot. Otherwise, you don't get a lot of openings for them. Like I also didn't learn until watching the video speedrun with the Gamma Metroid when they hover back and forth. If you charge up your ice beam and you shoot them, they'll drop down. And they'll always go to counter. When they
Yeah.
always go to
Hmm.
attack you, you can counter them every time.
Oh yeah, that's like the secret for actually both the first two types of Metroid, really.
Yeah, you just got to counter them.
Yeah. And the thing I learned from the guide when I'm reading the guide was about parrying Ridley. So there's always just stuff that you can just figure out that they don't tell you, but is there that I like. I like that.
It does a good job of giving you enough time to parry, and it really it as long as you just aren't being impatient like I would be. Sometimes I get nervous and I hit the button too soon.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, sometimes I hit the button so soon I could hit it correctly when it finally came up because I would have waited too
Oh
long
God.
a few times. I get nervous. I mean, I also been sick while I was playing this game too, which kind of worked well because I was able to just lay in bed, grab my 3DS, and just play.
Hmm.
So it worked out well.
Yeah, I definitely started playing this in bed, which is not
Perfect.
healthy, but
I think I did as well.
I was really
It's just
sick, so it worked out well. Not
fun
COVID though,
plus the
thankfully.
3DS. Hey,
3DS
that's a plus.
Yeah, I work in assisted living, so I could just get tested every day. I'm like, yeah, I'm having symptoms. All right, let's go test you. Yep, you're negative. All right, back to work. So it was nice. I didn't get sent home. I didn't like how the ice beam is not connected to I like it more in Super Metroid and other Metroid games where the ice beam just complements your other beams. I didn't like it how
Sure. Yeah.
ice beam was its own beam. It did bother me a little bit. I had to switch to it.
Yeah. A lot of this game is very precise like that.
Yeah, which again, when you go play Dread, it's more like that. Like Dread is absolutely an evolution of this, and it's the same thing. Like precisely juggling your different weapons and abilities in an instant is sort of how the whole game works. So again, it was sort of an interesting. I agree with you that it's it was a departure that I wasn't super fond of back when it happened, but it definitely you see where it goes.
Okay, I mean it wasn't bad. I just like it better in Super Metroid when your beam just gets better and better, not a different beam.
Mm-hmm.
And the one criticism I probably will levy at the game outright is that the 3DS is not the most comfortable of systems for really precise button pressing like that.
Yeah, that's what I found too. Playing this is they use every button, and after a while, I was finding the same thing. It's like, man, I'm just I got to put this because the weight of the system and having to hold it steady, especially if you're playing in 3D, so you can't move around a lot. On top of having to control every button, and maybe this makes us just sound like really old men, but I found that it was pretty hard on the wrist.
It hurt my hand a couple times because I was playing on a 3DS XL, and there were a couple times where I had to stop because my hand was cramping up. My hand hurt.
Yes.
Same here.
So yeah, it could be old, but also I think it's just the 3DS XL is huge.
Mm-hmm.
That sucker is not small.
I'm curious to try it on the Switch because maybe that would work better.
It definitely does. Plus, then you also have the option of just putting it on the television and using like a Pro Controller or something, right?
Right.
So,
Unless you have a Switch Lite like me.
very true. Yeah. I mean, you'll have sort of the same issues, but the Switch is much bigger. Although I think does the Switch weigh less? I have no idea if it weighs less, but it doesn't feel like it weighs as much.
Easier to hold because when I played Super Metroid, I didn't have problems where I felt like my hand didn't cramp up and get numb like it did with a 3DS.
Yeah, there's more surface area.
It handles much better.
So there's a couple of games that Mercurysteam did before Lords of Shadow that are interesting.
Clive Barker's Jericho, I think, is the main one they're known for.
Yes, and then American McGee's Scrapland.
So I've never even heard of.
Oh wow, I've played that in the last couple of years. I remember that getting a lot of good press when it came out.
They're remastering it, apparently.
They came out the last month.
Oh, did it really? Okay.
Yes.
Never heard of that game.
But I mean, I loved when the first Lord of Shadow came out. I thought it was fantastic.
It's a great game.
Yeah.
Not playing it.
It's the second one was disappointing, but the first one was really good.
Yeah. I also like Mirror of Fate too. I haven't played 2 yet. One day. I mean, that's another reason I was excited to play this game. Because I like Mercury. I like their previous games were so it was interesting. I think a lot of it was I was just thrown off by the reviews when it came out. Because I don't like 3DS. Or I didn't have a 3DS for a long time. I didn't buy one until a friend of mine at work sold me one for like $100 or $150 with a bunch of Pokemon games and stuff.
Good deal.
It was. I just had no interest. I just wasn't. I had my Wii U and I'm like, I just don't care. I don't like handhelds that much.
So here's the thing. As someone who's very familiar with late stage 3DS up until the bitter end, I would argue that at least now the timeline is from this game on to the very end. The 3DS is some of the best run of any system I've ever seen. The
3DS is such an oddball, but so was the DS as far as and I always hand it to Nintendo for the way they handled both of those systems, because the DS when it came out I thought was just an absolute piece of garbage.
It was.
For a while it was, yes.
And then they turned it into this amazing little system. And then the 3DS, same thing. I was actually behind the 3DS 100% because I was all in on 3D video games anyway. I bought a 3D television just so I could play 3D stuff on the PS3, and it's just all about it. And it's like, well, the DS was great. It ended up being great, so the 3DS is going to be great. And then they had that awful sort of false launch on the thing.
Yeah.
But again, they handled it perfectly and came back to create again one of the best handheld systems ever.
Because the late stage 3DS has the benefit that the DS didn't, where the DS at the late stage was inundated by licensed games and all the kind of crap that you don't want to play. The late stage 3DS is just like RPGs. It's like just games, like games.
Yeah.
That you just play. Like the last Dylan's Rolling Western game came out during that time. You had just either Metro or Nintendo or Atlas or whoever just making and releasing real ass games until the very end. It was incredible.
Didn't hurt that the whole Dragon Quest series ended up on there in some form or another too.
I am very disappointed we never got Dragon Quest 11 on 3DS.
Yeah. And
in the States. That was the one game I wanted to play really bad.
Is that the online one?
No, that's 10.
Oh, okay.
11 on 3DS was like a older RPG styling. You had this option to switch between the 3D polygons and the original.
Oh yeah, now I know what you're talking about. I forgot 11. Okay.
Yeah.
Dragon Quest is a series I'm not up to date on as much as I should be. Another thing about this game, with the Aeon abilities, you get 4 new ones, which are completely new to this game. You have the scan we mentioned. You have lightning armor, which I really, really liked and used all the time. You have the burst shot I never really used, and you have the ability to slow down time, which I only used when the game made me for upgrades.
You never used the burst shot? I used it all the time.
I didn't like it because I have issues when I play games. And if I can use it for defense, I'm going to use it for defense instead, because I'd rather give myself more health than do more damage.
Oh, so you were saving energy. Okay.
Yeah, I
understand.
Because with the way I would do a lot of the boss fights, especially later on when you start fighting the Metroids that are like freaking giant monsters that can just murder you and have the cages over their weak spot. Like when I fought them, I would use it only for health because I wanted extra health. I wanted to be able to take the extra hits in case I messed up, even though in theory, yes, I could do more damage and kill them faster, but my brain's like, play safe.
That's interesting to hear, because now that you're saying that, I realize that I didn't use the Aeon abilities against the Metroids at all. It never even occurred to me to do it.
I just used to beam burst everything.
the speedrunners use them, the burst shot. Like, you can actually take the burst shot, what the speedrunners do, and they switch off from rockets or missiles to burst shot, and they keep switching back and forth.
Mhm.
And that's how they kill everything really fast as a speedrun.
I believe it.
I mean,
Absolutely.
they massacre bosses in no time if you do it that way.
I don't know why it never occurred to me to do. Isn't that weird? I
Yeah.
never even thought about it.
Well, it's a item that you feel like you use for puzzles too. So maybe it's kind of like
I
you're.
think
You're
that's
picking-
it. Yeah.
The real wild thing too is that you can like have different Aeon abilities happening at the same time.
Yes.
Well, that was to me was kind of one of the hardest things to wrap my head around because and they tell you that right up front. It's like when you're switching, if you have one activated, you can switch to another one.
Yeah, so
But
you can have the armor
turn it
and
off.
the beam shot at the same time, and it's like you can unload and be safe for a little while.
Yeah, but then you use more energy.
Yeah,
I had a lot of issues with safety just because I died a lot in this game. Like early on, I didn't think I was even going to get through this game. I was getting massacred, and then I learned.
Yeah,
and I got better, and I stopped dying as much.
That's wild.
Like the game really did teach me, which again reminded me a lot of Dark Souls, where I was forced to learn how to play the game. I was forced to play better. I was forced to, be more patient and not rush. Where a lot of games I can just rush through and not have to worry about it, even when I'm not cheating.
like Graffiti Kingdom.
Yes, I cheat, but yes. This was a game where I was forced to play. It was forced to teach me, and that's why it really reminded me so much of Dark Souls.
Which is, I think a valid comparison.
Yeah, I'm not saying because of difficulty so much, just because the fact that when I beat the Queen Metroid, which, again, that should be the final fight. I will stick to that. That should have been the end. That fight, I was having such a hard time with it. I didn't have all the E-tanks yet. I actually went and had to go get my Zero Suit Samus amiibo, because when you put that on the 3DS, you get 3 reserve tanks.
Wow, nice.
So I'm like, well, I get to actually use this for the first time for what it's made for, because I never used it. It looks cool on a desk. So I did that, and that's the only way. When I beat the Queen Metroid, I beat it with 29 or 39 health was left.
That's awesome.
And I didn't think I was going to make it, because when you fight her, you go through all her motions, you go through all these different strategies, and in the end, you have to roll inside of her mouth and plant a power bomb, but you're getting hurt, and I ran out of Aeon, so I didn't have my shield anymore. I'm like, oh shit, can I do this? I only have 100 health, and I went in there, and I think I would have been dead in another second, but luckily I got the bomb off. The bomb went,
Oh, is that what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, you didn't do that?
When she's on the ground?
Yeah.
I never did that. I just filled her up with super missiles.
Oh, I thought you had to go inside her to kill her.
No.
That's what the speedrunners did.
That's
Don't go
hilarious.
inside it because it hurts you. Every time you're in
Yeah.
there, you get hurt.
Yes, that's why I didn't do it.
How did you kill her, Greg, when you did before?
Oh, I don't even remember.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Oh, you're good. I know it's been a while.
But it hasn't. That's what really has me upset about the fact that I have no memory of this game. That really is that it hasn't actually been that long.
2020 felt like forever.
That's true. Yeah,
It was a terrible year.
it's true.
2021 wasn't that much.
Wasn't that
No.
much better?
No. At least in the
Yeah.
States, we got to play the Death Star song at one point. So in 2021, so that helped in the beginning of the year.
Nice.
Yes, Happy New Year, everybody.
Hey, it was for me in 2021. I was sitting there cheering like an Ewok for some reason, But so no, I get it. Like I feel like also this game can be kind of forgettable in a way too, because it doesn't really. Plus you play Metroid Dread, which is it sounds like a lot like this.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing is that, and that's obviously way more fresh. And like I said, I wasn't actually a big fan of it, so I've spent a lot of time and energy tearing it down. To be honest, in a world where most people adore it. So yeah,
So not one of your games of the year.
no, not at all. I actually in our Game of the Year podcast last week, I call it my biggest disappointment.
Okay, interesting.
That's not a lot of people's take on it. That's interesting to hear.
Yeah, it's just, well, it's funny because you guys are talking about Dark Souls and it's clearly an experience you've both had and I never have. I'm not a Dark Souls guy at all.
Mhm.
So, and I think that those of you who are into games like Dark Souls, although it is kind of cliche to say it's the Dark Souls of Metroid, because everything's the Dark Souls of something at this point, but it is actually very true. It definitely leans way more in that direction. And like I say, the things that we're talking about that Mercurysteam seems to have brought to the table, they are way more prominent in Dread. So if that's something that you like, and if that's the kind of challenge you're looking for, then Dread is a fantastic game.
The difference I think that is important is that something like Dark Souls has so many systems and ideas happening that, like, I don't know, last year around this time until maybe March or April, I got really deep into Dark Souls on Switch, and I had to put it down because of work stuff, and I'm afraid to go back to it because I don't
Good
think I
luck.
could ever get back to that level unless I play it all over again.
I love Dark Souls, but I won't recommend it to people. Because when I played it, it worked for me is I played it nonstop every day when I wasn't at work and I had time. Yeah. And then when I was at work or when I'd be on break or something, I would watch videos of what I was going to do in the game. Everything I consumed was Dark Souls for like 2 months, and that was the perfect way to experience it. But it just happened to be everything just lined up right where I could do that. Me and my wife worked different shifts.
But this game, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, getting back to kind of talking about Samus Returns is not that it's that intense, but it's kind of the same thing. I can imagine getting like halfway through this game and then putting it down for a couple weeks and picking it back up again. It would be really rough.
Yes.
Not maybe as bad as like Dark Souls, but it's like, because you've got so many things to manage at that point and so many things the game wants to, wants you to be familiar with and ready to do. And again, Dread is exactly the same way, because I actually did put it down for a while and then you pick it back up and it's like, well, I don't even remember half of the abilities that I have or how to trigger them or when I should use them. So this game actually is very similar to that, right? Like especially once you've unlocked all those Aeon powers, the game wants you to be using them.
Yes.
It doesn't want you to be reserving anything.
No, and it does a good job of giving you new Aeon stuff all the time too. Like you counter an enemy, you get more Aeon. You kill an enemy, you get more Aeon. Like it does a very good job of always giving you.
Oh, it's
so that
not
way
stingy.
You keep using it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like you're supposed to use Burst Beam all the time once you get it. I did not, but you're supposed to. Like if you watch speedrunners and you watch the way that the game works, like it encourages you to kill things that way because it kills things immediately without having to counter anything, and you can keep getting enough of it too.
Yeah, my argument was going to be also that like I think I could pick this up again if I had put it down, like unlike Dark Souls, but that's different. That's another story.
Yeah, it's a much
because the mechanics aren't
much
so challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, it's more of a harder game because you take like a lot of damage. Like I was watching one of the YouTube videos, and the guy said about once you get about 70% of the way through the game, you become much more power when you get the third suit and you get the phaser beam and you get the the plasma cannon. You get a lot stronger, but I never felt overpowered. Even at the end, I still like sometimes I had like all the max energy tanks. I'd be screwing around. I still almost get killed when I was messing around because you're never overpowered.
The game is also just denser compared to Fusion and something like that.
Yeah.
There's just so much more happening and so many more enemies ready to kill you. Like Fusion, there's a lot of empty areas or just weak enemy areas you're constantly going back to.
Right.
Like it can be hard, but you never feel quite as in danger all of the time.
The damage isn't as bad as Fusion, which is nice. The damage in Fusion that you take is ridiculous. It's too much. In this game, it does get that way sometimes. Like there are certain enemies, like there's a couple scenes, and this is not damage, but just reminded me of it, where you get chased by the digger, where you can die instantly if you get caught by his.
Yes.
Are terrible.
I did not. I died a bunch. At least the checkpoints are very friendly on that. Like you finish a section at checkpoints, it doesn't make you do the whole 3 sections over and over again. Because I died so many times on that too.
Yeah. Same.
Yeah,
but it was cool that it existed, but I didn't like it.
It's like a nice way to break things up a little bit, I think.
Yeah, and it did that well. I mean, this game, I didn't get bored of this game ever. Like I actually went through the entire map right before I beat the game, after I beat the Queen Metroid, and got all the energy tanks, tried to get all the Aeon tanks, tried to get as many missiles and super missiles as I could, just because, one, I wanted to keep playing, and two, I was scared of Ridley.
But also, there's also a really important power you get after the Queen Metroid.
Yes, which I did not expect.
No, it's my favorite part of the game.
The baby Metroid joins you, and the baby Metroid destroys certain blocks that you would see throughout the game that you couldn't touch.
Yes.
And it's such a weird thing. Yeah, it's like all those green crystals, only the baby Metroid can eat those.
Oh, well, you know what? Because I am going to continue playing this after we're done recording, and now you've just helped me not waste my time with those things.
Yeah, you cannot break them. You have to wait. You get once you beat Queen Metroid, you get the baby Metroid that follows you around, and then he'll eat those.
Which is, I think, a really great adaptation of that idea into something more gameplay focused.
Yeah.
Well, also the whole final, like once you beat the Queen Metroid and you're running around the game with the ability with like you made this comment off the air, Dominic, where you said like this is one of the few games where you really get to use the screw attack and space jump. Like you can just explore everything, and it was nice for a change. It wasn't like just the end of the game you get the screw attack.
Right.
That's
something I really enjoyed, was like just being able to go through the game and just being able to just constantly use it. And I don't know, like there's something that is just really nice about having like the baby Metroid be the final thing because it makes sense in the story. Whereas I feel like Metroid tends to just have a random power up, kind of what I was saying earlier. It's a randomizer. Whatever's last is last. Usually it's a screw attack.
Yeah.
Right.
But there's no reason for it to be there.
I did like it when the game does the fuck you moment near the end before you fight the Metroid Queen, where all of a sudden your counter goes from 1 Metroid to 10 Metroids.
Yes.
And those were not nice Metroids either. Like I fought a lot of Metroids because I played a lot of Metroid games. This was some of the hardest ones I fought, where if you don't charge up your ice beam and hit them, you are not going to hurt them and they are going to murder you.
Oh, I just shot them with the regular ice beam and just missiled them in between shots.
I couldn't get it. I shot him and I had to charge it to kill him easy.
If you super missile them between shots, it's a one shot if you freeze them.
Okay, I guess I just wasn't that fast at hitting buttons. I didn't think about that, but I had a hard time with them. They weren't as easy as they were in Super Metroid.
Yeah, not that they were easy as Super Metroid either.
No, but they're easier. I could just shoot them with the beam and they were frozen.
Sure.
I didn't have to charge my beam because I don't like charging my beam in general.
Oh, really?
Metroid. Yeah, I like to shoot fast. I don't like to charge. And this game made me charge a lot. I also
that was like the only way to fight Metroids I found. But anyway,
you're supposed to. But in Super Metroid, you can skip it by freezing them with just a regular beam. I think. Maybe I'm remembering wrong.
I don't know. It's been a while since I played that.
It's only been a couple months for me. It wasn't that long ago we went back to it. But I can't. I just released the episode like a week ago, but I can't remember what I said or what I did or anything. But I definitely a lot of games.
Yeah, playing 2 Metroid games back to back like this was really interesting.
You played one of the best too.
I was gonna say, and if you're playing those 2 back to back, it's definitely interesting because you're seeing an evolution there. This is definitely moving. This game moved the series to what it is now.
They also
which I'd forgotten until I played it again for the show.
They do a good job. Like anytime you get to a missile rooms always lead to a power up too, which I didn't realize. Like anytime as a red berry, you're gonna get a power up in that room.
Yes.
Or watch the digger take it away from you.
I did not realize.
I didn't. Speedrunner told me.
Ah.
That's why I watch Awesome Games Done Quick a lot of times before I do something, because they have so much information they talk about a game that is good to know.
That's true. Yeah, they do always tell you, like, and here's the reason I know this. It's like, oh my God, why didn't I know that?
And I do love the counters when you counter a Metroid or a boss, like, and you have the whole little scene of her fighting them. Like, I love that. And you just keep shooting them.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
So,
Greg,
one
of my favorites.
Greg, I'm curious, what are your top Metroid games?
I mean, Super Metroid is number one for sure.
Mm-hmm.
A big fan of Metroid Prime, the first Metroid Prime as well. But I mean, other than that, they're kind of all over the place. But those 2 are the top 2 for me. I ended up liking this way more than I thought I did. The fact that I had almost no memory of it made me think that I just didn't really like it.
Mm-hmm.
But not the case. I mean, I'm really enjoying it. But otherwise, I would have trouble ranking them. I mean, I have fond memories of Fusion, but I think mostly because it was a 2D Metroid and it was sort of in the afterglow of Prime as well. Mm-hmm. So, because we went for a long time without a Metroid game. I mean, what Prime was like 94, or sorry, Super Metroid was 94.
Mm-hmm.
And then Prime was 2003? 2? Okay. So, I mean, we'd gone that long anyway. And then for Fusion to come out at the same time, pretty much, it's just like, okay, I was just ready to play Metroid games. But then after that, it kind of was such a weird, fluctuating quality curve. Like Echoes wasn't great. Prime 3 I never got into.
Prime 3 is such a shallow game.
Yeah. Zero Mission I really liked a lot. But, again, that had a lot to do with the nostalgia of playing the original Metroid when I was a kid.
Zero Mission's still really good, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
I just wanted some perspective on that only because, I grew up with Fusion. And like I said, I only played Super Metroid recently for the first time. As someone who's played most of these games now, but not ever getting to that one really. And so, like, for me, Super Metroid is like probably like number 5 or something. And that it's like it feels like a prototype of what came later. Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, I mean that makes perfect sense. I mean, so many ranked lists have everything to do with, what you experienced at a certain age. That's I don't know if it was on this show or another show that I was on, but somebody made a really good point once that's always stuck with me. And it's somebody else's point, but they applied it to video games. Mm-hmm. Whereas like the golden age of anything is from the time you were, let's say, 12 to like 17. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's
Yeah, I can
your
see that.
golden age, right? Like,
Sure.
and it's absolutely true because again, like I would hold up something like Super Metroid, and a lot of the gamers of my generation, you know, when I worked at EGM and we did a top 100 list while I was there, we all unanimously picked Super Metroid as the greatest game of all time, right? But that was because we were all very similar ages when it came out. You know, we were all in our late teens when it came out, or our mid-teens when it came out. So it was just sort of the perfect time for that game to be. And it is an amazing game, but it doesn't surprise me in the least to hear somebody who didn't experience it when it first came in, or didn't experience it at sort of that age, to not consider it the best game in the series.
Right. And I guess that makes sense why 2011 is like this year I have a lot of affection for, because that's when I turned 17, you know?
There you go. Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and that's definitely the way that I look at all that stuff. But it was just, you know, Super Metroid was great because, again, it felt like such a perfect evolution of the original Metroid. I bounced off Metroid 2, but the original Metroid, a friend and I played through the whole thing. And I mean, that was back when, you know, we were making maps on graph paper, because there was no map system in that game whatsoever, and no save states or save files or anything like that, right? So, you know, to get Super Metroid, which basically took all the best pieces of the first game, gave you a map on top of it, plus it was on Super Nintendo, so it looked and sounded amazing.
Yeah.
It's definitely stuck with me. But again, I was 17 or 18 when it came out. So,
I mean, sure. But I guess what I'm gonna say then is that with Fusion and Zero Mission, I always felt like there was more they could do. I always felt like those games were great. I really like those games. Those are in my top 5 as well. But I think this is the game that finally was like, no, this is what more could be.
Yeah, which I think makes perfect sense. And playing this now, and the discussion that we've been having on our show about Dread, and I've said this multiple times, is Dread is a great game. It's a fantastic game. It deserves all the accolades it gets. But for me personally, as a 45-year-old person who's been gaming since the early 80s,
sure,
I feel left behind by it. Whereas this series has absolutely evolved to appeal to a younger audience that grew up with different sensibilities, a different baseline of what these games are. You know what I mean? Like, my baseline for the Metroid series is Metroid. And, you know, whereas if you're someone who, like you're saying, especially where you have a lot of nostalgia for like 2010, 2011, around there, the sensibility is completely different, you know? So it absolutely makes sense that Metroid means different things to different age groups, for sure.
I mean, maybe I'm not the best example because I did grow up with Fusion. I feel like Fusion's already also part of a bygone era.
Yeah.
It was a throwback to, it was absolutely a throwback to the early 90s.
Right.
When it was made, I think it was made to be that. Just like I think Zero Mission was made to be, you know, hey, what if Metroid was Super Metroid? You know?
Yes.
That's really all it was. So I think it's fair to say that they were limited.
Zero Mission's my favorite by far.
Yeah.
If only Super Metroid was on GBA, I would have played.
There's ROM hacks of that if you want to find out. But I just love Zero Mission a lot. I feel like that's the challenge, the difficult, the way that game does things, the health. I like it much better than any other one.
But it's absolutely I think it's a very fair thing to say that they're limited, because those games were meant to feel nostalgic while still bolting on some more modern gaming sensibility to it.
Right.
Like this game does it, you can, it is really definitely built for a different era. You can feel that. Like same. Yeah. I'm really interested now to try Dread after playing this.
So am I.
And after this conversation,
I'm interested to hear you guys talk about it.
It's coming. I'll probably put it on the show coming up here in a season or two.
Yeah, we'll do it this year probably, I guess.
Yeah, probably late this year. Yeah, I don't have a Metroid game next season just because I need a break. I've been playing a lot of Metroid games lately. I'm just like, yeah, that's enough. Oh, only two other things we hadn't really addressed on yet. One, I want to talk about the Ridley Fight. I feel like the Ridley Fight, which isn't in the original, shouldn't be in this game. I didn't like it that it's here. It bothered me. It just felt tacked on and unnecessary.
Sure.
Ridley always feels like they're I don't know. There's this weird thing with Nintendo and having Ridley in Metroid games. It feels like it's some sort of cash cow for them. I don't know. I have a better way to describe it, but it feels like they shoehorn Ridley into every Metroid game.
Yeah,
they need to make fetch happen.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't because at the very end. I mean, it kind of tricks you. Like you get the baby Metroid, you head back to your ship, and when you get to your ship, the Ridley fight starts, I didn't even know it was in this game until I was watching the speedrun. I'm like, what? There's another boss, and I was really surprised. So I was terrified of Ridley. Like, I went and got all the E-tanks, all the Aeon gauge, but one that I couldn't figure out how to get, all the many super missiles that I could get that weren't too much trouble. I went and tried to get everything because I was scared of the fight.
Right. Now, here's the question. Does the Ridley fight then bolster what happens at the end of Super Metroid, or does it weaken it?
I would say it weakens it because it's like more at the beginning of Super Metroid, because she just fought him, beats his ass, and then fights him again, not that long later.
Right. More because what I'm talking about is at the end of Super Metroid, the thing with the baby coming in to help you and like sacrificing itself was such a iconic moment for a lot of people, especially if you didn't know going into it.
I would say it kind of weakens that because the baby already defended her once before.
Right. It's like at the end of the game here, the baby is just doing that repeatedly to Ridley, which I could see an argument for it being like, oh, you're kind of establishing the power. And then the baby, of course, is going to use the power again. But
yeah,
for savvy people, I feel like it does cheapen that moment a little bit.
Yeah. It just felt so unnecessary that he was there, and I just didn't like it. I mean, I beat him on my first try, which I was really proud of.
What?
I had 100 health. But I did watch speedrun videos. I watched guides of what to do the same way I would confront a Dark Souls boss, where I would watch how people do it, what people do, what works, what doesn't work. So when I went into it, I wasn't blind. I had all the energy tanks, plus I had the 3 reserve tanks, and I had almost a full Aeon gauge, which I used for health. So
wow. I
took a lot of hits. I just could take a lot of hits, and I still beat him with I had less than 100 health when he finally went down. Incredible. It's a fucking long fight too.
Yes.
It's like a 5-minute fight, and I don't like games that have really long boss fights like that. Like, I don't like where you're just going back and forth, just trading blows, just waiting for the special opening. I don't like that.
With concrete, different phases too.
Yeah,
it bothered.
And that's if you're gonna play Metroid Dread, get ready for that, because that's what the bosses are in Metroid Dread.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's somebody on our Discord mentioned that in a conversation we were having, and I had forgotten about that in this game, where it's like, I could see people not being excited about basically having every boss fight be like that Ridley boss fight, but that's really what they start to feel like in Dread.
It does sound daunting.
It is. It's the Dark Souls of Metroid. I don't know if you heard, but
I am really excited to play Dread though now. I'm getting more and more excited to play it. I know very little about it.
It's a good game.
It's gonna happen. I mean, this game did get me a lot more excited for it though.
Maybe we should play Scrapland sometime too.
I didn't even know that existed until just now.
I mean, it's probably better than Bad Day LA.
I don't know what that is. Oh, and what do you guys think of the music? I didn't really listen to the music because I played this game mostly music.
It's, you know what? That I would say is probably my least favorite part of this game. And not because the music that's there is bad, because there's especially when you get into the fire areas, and was it Norfair, I think that's the name of the original fire area in the first game. There's what music is there is sort of throwback to the old games, which I love. Yeah. Right? The fiery areas are very much, I think they were throwback to Super Metroid. And I want to say that when you start playing that tune that's there is actually from Metroid 2.
And there's also some Prime in there, and the instrumentation, I feel like.
Right. That's all great, but there's not much of it. And I found there were a lot of long stretches of the game where I didn't even notice the music. And in Metroid games, music, for me anyway, the Metroid games leading up to this have always been such a big part of the game is the soundtrack. Yeah. So it's a little bit disappointing, I have to say.
Okay. I just don't like. I played a little bit with the music on, but I put a podcast on.
Right.
That's how I like to play my games.
Yeah, it's weird not having an opinion on the Metroid music or sound design, really, especially after Super Metroid is most important at this point because of how atmospheric it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
But at least I don't hate it.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, I shouldn't say that. It's not bad. The music, the composition is not bad. It's actually what music is there I really like a lot, but it's just not a prominent part of the game. And
it just relies on what's there.
Yeah.
What's already been done. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Would love to see more new themes at some point.
Yeah, that fit the overall feel of the overall tone of the series. And that's something that I feel like Dread kind of did the same thing. They definitely still went more the route of it's just not a prominent. The sound design is good, but the music is not a prominent part of the game.
Mm-hmm. Like the thing I remember most is the parry sound.
Yeah,
You hear it enough.
Oof. That and the tone when you use the pulse scan and there's something that you can blow up or destroy. My kids would hear me, like, they couldn't see me playing. Obviously, they could only hear it, and my daughter especially, she's like, "What is that dinging noise?" Like, Daddy has to go blow up a brick.
Because Dread has the counter system again too a lot, right?
Yeah, but it's cooled down a lot. You still have to use it, but you don't use it nearly as much as you do in this game.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, but you use it more on the bosses.
That's fine. I didn't mind it in the boss. I liked it in the boss fight. I just didn't like it on every single bat I would see. That was annoying.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, to the point where you, in this game, right, it's like, well, I'm not even going to try to shoot you because I know you're going to charge me before I kill you, so what's the point?
There was no point. You just waited until and then you just did it.
Yeah.
But
that's a sound, too, that should be in Metroid.
All right, any last things you want to say before we go on to questions, comments, or memories?
Well, should I drop it here, or should I wait?
Drop what? I forgot what.
No, I think this is my favorite Metroid game.
Oh, you can drop it.
Really?
Yeah, maybe. I think so. We'll see.
Now I really want to hear what you think of Dread when you play it.
Like,
I feel
next year we know what we're doing.
Yeah, I feel like if this is your
A little later
favorite,
this
then there's a high probability you're going to love Dread.
We will see.
All right, I did get a bunch of comments. I'm going to read some of them. First from I watched the entire Overlord Super replay from Eric Hunt, friend of the show, also has his own podcast, Nomads of Fantasy, which I was on. He wrote, I believe Samus Returns was the first Metroid game that I finished. I remember really loving it, and it paved the way for what Metroid Dread became.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yes.
100%.
I assume so.
From the Metroid group, let's see. First one from Robert PG. When I saw the trailer, I jumped up in excitement. I knew it would be good, which it was, though it did drag in some spots, and the chase spots from the robot were infuriatingly difficult. But that last secret boss fight was such a surprise, and all I can say is the title meant it. Samus has indeed returned. Okay?
Yes, sure.
And from Isaacin, because I can't pronounce the rest of his name. Before this game was announced, I honestly thought Metroid had joined Star Fox and F-Zero as a dead Nintendo franchise. So not only getting a genuine Metroidvania after whatever the heck Federation Force was supposed to be was such an unexpected joy.
Yeah, that I agree with that 100%. They had really lost their way with the Metroid franchise, I think, after Prime and Zero Mission.
So what this is saying, is they need to find the right external developer to do Star Fox.
Absolutely.
Well, Zero would be good if you just get rid of those terrible controls.
Hey, Switch Edition, let's do it.
Why didn't they just hire whatever company developed Starlink and just have them make a Star Fox game?
Well,
that's Ubisoft.
Yeah. Well, I don't know who developed it. I don't know if Ubisoft.
Let's look.
I bought Starlink actually on Steam sale.
I'm staring at. I bought them super cheap. Like I have my Star Fox edition sitting right.
Oh, I have mine too.
I kick myself. I saw it for cheap. I didn't have a Switch, so I didn't buy it, and I regret it because I want that damn art.
Yep, that's the only reason I bought it.
It's Ubisoft Toronto. So
is it? Okay.
Yeah, and then Virtuous did the Switch port.
There you go. Sign him up for Star Fox. Full Star Fox game.
I'm actually speaking of Star Fox, I'm playing Dino Adventure later this year.
Ooh, Dinosaur Planet.
That's something.
Ooh, Dinosaur Planet's interesting. Oh, yeah, do I want to be on that one too?
Interesting is a
word. I've never played it, so
I grew up with that game.
I'm excited to finally play it.
I remember the discourse about that game. It was legendary as a child.
I have a friend who is not a Nintendo gamer at all, and so he has no real nostalgia for especially 16-bit Nintendo because he was Genesis all the way at that point. So he's not a Star Fox fan. But how did it work? When Sega got out of consoles, he blamed Sony for that. So he bought an Xbox because he hated Sony. And again, I shouldn't say that. He bought a GameCube because he hated Sony.
Fan wars.
And so which is funny because now he plays nothing but PlayStation. But so in I do Extra Life stream, 24-hour Extra Life stream every year. And this past year, one of the games on there was Star Fox Adventures, Dino Planet. And he was coming over to sort of help me out, and he's like, "Oh, I'm going to come over during the Star Fox Adventure segment because I loved that game." I was like, "Really? You loved that game? Okay." And we played it for an hour, and by about half hour in, he's like, "This is terrible. Why did I like this? Like, it's really bad."
Oh, anyway. I don't know about it being really bad.
Oh, how long has it been since you played it?
It's been a few years. I probably last touched it maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah. It was just a funny transition because he was so excited that we were playing it, and then played it for like I said, about a half hour, 45 minutes in. He's just like, man, I can't even fathom how I played through this. Like,
well, I mean, I think there were far worse games from that time. Sonic Adventure.
Oh, there were, for sure. And it wasn't so much the mechanics as much as it's just sort of peak rare. Here's a million things to collect. And that's what we were both mostly getting irritated about, right? It's
you'll probably enjoy this. When I was like 5, my first console was an N64.
Donkey Kong Country 64?
No.
Oh.
My first 2 games were Pokemon Stadium, which was the pack-in game, and Jet Force Gemini. I did not understand what I was doing in that game. I cannot play that game to this day because my mind just goes blank.
Rare was never more rare than they were with the N64. Like, they were just in peak form. And I don't mean that in a good way. But anyway.
All right, and then last one from this group. I have a couple there still. From David Hunt. It was a game we needed. It restored our faith in Nintendo and brought new faith in a new developer for the series. While it may now be seen as more of a stepping stone to Dread, the excitement at the time was through the roof, and the game seemed very constrained by the 3DS hardware. I kind of hope we get an updated Switch port at some point, a Samus Return DX, if you will.
I'd play that.
That would be nice.
Yeah. I'd also play if they tease Fusion at the end of this game. I'd love to see them tackle Fusion for real.
I mean, there's a Fusion suit you can get in this game if you have the one of the amiibos.
Well, that was the story, too, is that they were originally pitching a Fusion remake, and then they're like, no, how about Metroid 2?
Oh, yeah.
I wonder now, because Metroid Dread did really well, right?
Oh, yeah.
And even in Japan, which I don't think they were expecting it to. So the fact that it's done well sort of worldwide gives me a lot of hope that we'll see a lot more Metroid in the coming years.
I would hope so. It's like the journey of Nintendo franchises.
Yeah.
But the 8th one in is like the big mega hit.
Yeah.
And from the Metroidvania group, I have a few. From Joaquin Perez, to me, both Returns and Dread felt very meh. After playing games like Hollow Knight, they just felt so by the numbers. Metroid Prime 4 was where I put my hope for an amazing Metroid experience. Okay.
Have you played Prime 3, though?
Yeah.
I'm actually really excited for the Prime Collection to come out because I really want to try Prime 3 without motion controls.
Oh, they need to do like a expanded edition of that game.
Well, you can play Metroid Prime 3, I think, using a mouse instead of a Wiimote if you hack it a little bit on the emulation.
Oh, yeah?
But you can do it for Metroid Prime. I was going to back when we played that, but I was too lazy to do it. But yeah, you can actually set it all up so your mouse is your Wiimote, and then you can use a keyboard. And you play like a first-person shooter.
I think you told me that once before.
Yeah.
The other times we were recording.
I didn't do it yet, but if I ever play Prime 3, I don't have a choice because I hate Wii.
See, that's sort of right up there with me in the whole, like, I learned earlier this year that I could get Virtual Boy Emulator running in 3D on my 3D television. Nice. So it's like one of those things, like, I gotta do that. I haven't done it, but I gotta do it.
And another comment I'll read from this group, from Mike C. Negrel. Returns was a fun remake, just wish the mood was creepier and not so bright like in the original game.
Sure.
Yeah, I could see that.
All right, and then from Metroid fans, I'll read one or two. All right, from Richard Ratliff, I love it. I love the original Game Boy version too, but this one was better in every single way, in my opinion.
I agree with that.
And from Sylvian Parsian, loved it. The graphics were amazing, and seeing SR388 alive like this made it all worth reliving. It's not made to trash or compare to AM2R. It is its very own.
Oh yeah, the people who talk about AM2R so much, I'm just like, I get it. I'm sure it's cool, but that was also like I think a reason people did not like this game originally.
Yeah,
because absolutely,
it wasn't as good as the fan project that came out, which I don't want to knock that, but it's like, come on, just give the 3DS a chance.
Well, that they shut down AM2R,
which sucks. Absolutely.
I mean, I have it on a computer, so it's not like it's gone. But
yeah, exactly. I mean,
I just
too, and it is really nice.
I mean, once you put something on the internet, it isn't gone.
I just think people did this game really dirty in 2017. They found every excuse they could to not play it or not give it the accolades it deserved.
Again, fandom, right?
Mm-hmm. I really want to play AM2R someday now, especially more after playing this game.
Yeah, I didn't play through that, but what I played of that, I really enjoyed. And it is really well done.
Yeah, I mean, I think anytime you're going to make a fan game, just don't talk about it until it's...
Yeah, exactly.
Just put it out.
Done, you can just put it out load.
Yeah.
I mean, they send you a cease and desist. It doesn't matter. Once you put it out there, it'll be out there.
Exactly.
Maybe don't have Kotaku write an article about it.
Not until you're finished.
Yeah.
Finish your game first, and then let Kotaku write the article. Like Crimson Echoes, I think that was another game that got cease and desist, but they did finish it later on.
Oh, Crimson Echoes.
I want to play it one day, but that's neither here nor there. And from the last group I'm going to read from, Official Leisure Time Community, from Tom Storm. This game got me back into Metroidvanias after falling off them for a while. Loved it and very glad they allowed the devs to make the next non-remake game in the series.
Yes, same.
I am too. I mean, I'm happy to know that this became more. And from Andrew Gable, the walk back to the ship with the baby should not have had combat. AM2R got that part right. What happened when you actually get to the ship is I agree.
Oh, I like having the baby around to do stuff.
I do too. I just don't like the Ridley Fight.
That I'll give you. I just like having the baby do something instead of just not.
Yeah, no, that was cool. It's cool that it helps you, because I went back and got so many different power-ups a lot easier than it would have been without the baby. I could skip entire morph ball puzzles with just using the baby.
Yeah.
So that was nice. Right. I'm going to read two more. From Nick Perry, it's hit and miss for me. I love the background visuals. The remix of Lower Brinstar gives me chills. Didn't care so much for the uppercut move, though. But the drill machine boss is fantastic. I disagree completely, but all right. I hate that boss. Made me want to quit the game. Made me want to I should emulate this game.
I'm glad you stuck.
I really love this game, or I could just set it on fire.
Well, the drill boss, I fought him multiple times. At one point, I got him to his final phase where you have to jump on his head and put 3 different little bombs and when they connect and blow up the center spot. And I had one left, and then I died, and I was pissed.
That's something I look up a guide for.
I had to go through the entire phase again, and that's what killed me, because there just wasn't enough time to do it. And when I beat him the last time, I still had to go through I got 2 of them, and I had to wait and go through the whole entire phase of dodging everything to do it again. I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah, that's the thing I don't have a ton of patience for that stuff either.
Me either. And last one I'm going to read from Carrie Chandler, friend of the show. This is the first Metroid game I 100%ed. It got a lot of hate when it came out that I really don't get. I ranked it 4th in the series after Super, Dread, and Prime, just a hair above 0. Okay? I'm glad people do like it. It does make me happy that a lot of people do enjoy this game. Some people don't, but a lot of people do. Yeah,
well, I mean, if you're going to let a franchise lay dormant like that, and again, where they had such a troubled late 2010s, with the Prime sequels and with Other M, I mean, I think they made the right move. It's clearly there was still a desire for this series. It wasn't big all over the world, so it made sense for Nintendo not to take it on themselves. So yeah, why not? Why not swing for the fences, give it to somebody else, and just sort of, it's worked for Luigi's Mansion as well. They did the exact same thing. Now, Luigi's Mansion didn't have that weird checkered history, but it was a dormant series for a long time. And same thing. It's there's clearly an appetite for it. It's not worth us doing it ourselves. And let's get a third-party developer and see what they can do.
And Nintendo found a better way to work with Team Ninja.
Yeah. and never give Metroid back to Team Ninja.
I was so excited for that game because I liked Team Ninja than I played it.
Yeah, have them co-develop Fire Emblem instead.
There you go.
Because they're a good developer, I think.
Sure they are. They just weren't good for Metroid.
Because I loved Dead or Alive games back when I used to play those.
Dead or Alive 3 is great.
Yeah. All right, I think we should go to Shelf Stacker Box, and I'll go first. I'm going to put this on the shelf. I really like this game. I went into it not expecting to enjoy it as much as I did. I was actually dreading playing this for I was for a while. I was actually really nervous I had to play Sly 2, then I played this game, and I was really, really worried, especially when I didn't emulate it, that am I even going to beat this for the show? Am I even going to finish this game? And the fact that I did, and how just pumped up I felt after doing it, this game was great. I put it on the shelf, definitely going to recommend it to people, and I hope it does come on Switch someday, because more people need to play this game. It definitely deserves to be just re-released. Doesn't need to be a remake, just re-release it and change. Well, yeah, I mean, Switch is touchscreen too, right? Or can be.
Can be.
So I mean, you could easily put a button to do that, but
you could also put the Aeons on the Z triggers.
Yeah, that'd be better.
But yeah, it should definitely be on there. So that's what. Oh, what about you, Dominic?
Oh, shelf, absolutely. Put it on the shelf above all the others, maybe. And probably.
And what about you, Greg?
Yeah.
Shelf as well. Basically, for all the reasons you just said. I mean, when I went into this, having played it before and not having strong memories of it, I was really worried that I wasn't going to enjoy it. And it's fantastic. It's so good. So happy with it.
I hope you get to go back and play it again, because I think you'll enjoy it if you keep playing it.
I'm planning on finishing it. Now that and again, having an excuse to bust out the 3DS, because I haven't touched it since the Switch came out. So
I'm a 3DS evangelist. I always advise you to take out your 3DS.
I miss 3D games.
I don't know how you play in the 3D.
Oh, it's great.
I can't do it. And I think I should announce what we're going to be talking about next week. Next week, I am visiting a game that I am being brokenhearted about. I'm playing Sonic Adventure 2 Battle for GameCube.
Oh, yes.
I had such fond memories, and I'm realizing my fond memories lied to me.
It's a great game. It's a great B game. It is such a fantastic, funny game.
I was so excited to play it, and I'm replaying it. I'm like, oh, no, this isn't fun anymore.
Oh, I don't know how. Oh, my God. I love Dreamcast era. It's so good.
So that's what you get to hear about next week. And Greg, where can people find you at?
You can find me at playeronepodcast.com every week. We're pushing to our 800th episode in the next few weeks.
Nice.
And like I say, you can find me on YouTube. Just look up Greg Sewart, or Generation 16 is my main series, and that is where I review the history of the Sega Mega Drive and Genesis one game at a time. Just moving into the year 1991 right now, actually. Pretty big year for the Genesis. It's going to be cool.
And Dominic, where can people find you at?
I'm in the Overblood Facebook group. You can find me on Twitter at DACICHOCKI. And I'm also on the Dissonant Waves podcast. We're entering our 3rd year coming up pretty soon. So check us out on YouTube, Dissonant Waves.
You know, I completely forgot to say that this is our 3rd year anniversary episode. Completely forgot I was going to say that. Because when you're hearing this, it's been 3 years that this podcast has been running.
Congratulations as well.
That's awesome.
And we just hit, at the time of this recording, we just hit 75,000 downloads too.
Nice.
Both things I meant to mention at the top of the show, but that did not happen. So yeah, the show's been going. That's one reason I picked this game, to honor our 3-year anniversary. I figured we should play an Metroid game. So yeah. All right. And if you enjoyed this episode, you can go find tons of more episodes. If you can't find it, you won't be able to find everything on Spotify or iTunes because they only go back 100 something, and there's 280 some episodes of the show currently. So definitely just go use Podbean. It has everything on Podbean. You can also please follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and on YouTube. We are on YouTube with only audio, but we're on YouTube if you want to hear us that way. You can definitely do that. And we have a Patreon. If you want to help support the show for as little as $1, you can vote in our Patreon poll. The current Patreon poll is what Tim Burton film we should watch, and there's 4 you can just choose from, what you think we should cover. And I want to give a shout out to my awesome intro and outro, courtesy of Helena at Hell Has Fury. You can follow her on TikTok. You will see a link in the show notes to everything that we have mentioned for all the plugs. And last thing to say is my buddy Bill Tucker started his own podcast, A Gamer Looks at 40. Definitely go check him out. Not too long ago, he got to interview the author of 8-Bit Christmas. So definitely go check that out.
Nice.
I was listening to that a little bit today, finally. And I think that's everything I need to say. So I want to thank you two for joining me for more Metroid. And we will see you guys all next time. Bye, everybody.
Goodbye.